School is brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
I'm Lindsay Smith with RealAgriculture.com. I'm joined today by John Hurt, who works in soil extension with Mafford. No?
Yes, that's right.
Close enough?
Yeah, today we're here looking at corn.
Yes, so what we've got is a ramp, right, of nitrogen, varying rates of nitrogen.
Right.
So what are we trying to evaluate with this diagnostic in front of us?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do is we have a number of agronomists and crop scouts, certified crop advisors, they're visiting us at the diagnostic school, and one of the things is to train your eye, sometimes with the help of some tools and gadgets, to detect nitrogen sufficiency or conversely deficiency. And we have corn. We have corn here, but we also have canola and wheat. It just so happens that corn's at the stage right now that it's easiest to discern nitrogen differences in. So we have a few devices here. As agronomists are pointing out, we know that when nitrogen rates differ, you generally see it either as growth or green color. The green color due to chlorophyll content. And so I'm going to show just a few of the older methods of evaluating green color and how that relates to nitrogen.
Now we should also introduce your lovely assistant, Marla. There we go. Yeah.
Marla Rickman's our soil management specialist, and I am more often her assistant than she mine.
As it should be.
Something like that, yeah.
Right. Okay, so what are we looking at?
Well, first we want to start with one of the basics, is that this is a color chart that's actually used worldwide, more specifically in rice management. And it simply relates to the color. Of course, we don't have rice here, but we have corn, where the farmer would relate a highly fertilized or nitrogen-rich area compared to the field, and then fertilize accordingly to a scale to move it up to fully fertilized. And sometimes people need to have a bit of a reference for that. This actually has worked quite well. Sometimes, although some of our crops, corn and wheat, well fertilized, will actually be off scale. We use this as an example. Sometimes it works well for us, sometimes not so, but it's a start.
Are there ones that are specific for corn or wheat, or really you can only find it for rice?
Really, the rice industry is the only one that's really widely adopted this. Although we like using this in some evaluations and just training your eye. Okay. It helps to have a standard. Curtis Cavers, our friend, always used to say how the fear this strikes into the hearts of men when their wives come home with a set of these, because they know all weekend is wasted painting in the house.
Right. Now it's the reverse. Now they're going to be out there.
Right, scouting the corn crop.
Okay.
One of the more specific ones that's being used, again developed for rice but found application in others, is a chlorophyll meter. And this is one that actually gives a number or an index of the chlorophyll measure. So we tend to choose the most the mature advanced leaf here, so it's one that has a collar on it and halfway out the stem, and it will give us a value here. I'll show you a value, and then we ask, what does that mean? It's strictly an index, and what we started with, it's an index compared to the fully fertilized check. Here we have one that with 200 pounds of nitrogen. We'd look at, and to use these devices, farmers would need to have that high nitrogen reference in the field. So we would have that, and then we would do some scouting of the farmer rate, and then see if it's sufficient.
So what does that little jobby cost us?
Well, it's about $1,500.
Okay.
So it's something that has been out of the price range for a lot of crop scouts, and to be honest, the utility is such that it's just monitoring some of the crop growth. But now that there seems to be a bit more interest in some early season crop intervening in the field, if we run short of nitrogen or if we've had nitrogen losses, that may be why someone would want to try these.
So, and that's one, and we'll look at maybe a more accessible option in a minute, but one of my questions, and that farmers often ask, is that this is an evaluation of how we're doing with our fertility program,
Right.
not necessarily a means to then go in, because we're past the point of adding nitrogen.
We are for this crop, but at an earlier stage, there are guidelines. We have guidelines out of Iowa for use with this. We've developed some of our own little thumb rules as compared to the high nitrogen check. If you're within 5%, I would say you're fertilized well. You're well within the sufficiency. It's only when you're greater than 5% difference that we might look at supplemental. But again, it needs to be early enough in the growth stage that it can actually be taken up by the plant.
So let's say, for example, for wheat, how early is that early stage?
Well, we could go over here, but it would basically be at the early jointing stage, or when you're first starting to get stem elongation. That's when you like. It's also been used in wheat to do some reference as far as late nitrogen for protein. So that's an application that's been looked at in Montana and other areas. So it's a tool, but not always calibrated everywhere. And so you have to be very careful in picking and choosing your calibrations and do some validation on your own to see if it's providing use or whether it's simply a distraction.
Okay.
Some of these are toys, not tools.
All right, Karen and Candace, you're going to walk us through what is this called, how does it work?
Okay, so this is the Field Scout Green Index. It's an app that you can get on your Apple devices, so an iPad, iPhone. You go onto the iTunes store and you buy Field Scout Green Index app for $99. It's just essentially a camera here. This is what the app looks like. And what it does is the same function as a SPAD meter. So it measures the green color of the leaf to assess nitrogen fertility. So it's pretty simple. We're going to calibrate it first. So this is like when you have the SPAD meter, you zero it while it's empty. What it says is lock white balance, use gray area. So I'm going to zoom in on just the gray part here, and I press the scale button in the corner, and that sort of zeroes it. And then you take the most fully developed leaf, so that's one that has a collar from your corn plant, and you take a picture here of the green reference, the yellow reference, the pink, and the leaf. And it's as simple as taking a picture, just like that. So I have a picture that looks essentially like this. Candace can follow along with me as well. It'll ask you to tap the green reference. They'll ask you to tap a yellow reference, and it asks you to tap a leaf. So you pick somewhere on the leaf that's representative, not somewhere that has damage or not right on the middle of it. And then it's as simple as pressing done. It gives you some stats here, including the SPAD equivalent, which is what we're looking for in this case. So it's giving a number of 47.8. We'd hope that's what John gets with his $1,500 SPAD meter. But again, because it's a relative number, that you would compare a nitrogen-rich strip to a nitrogen ramp, it really doesn't matter as long as it's relative.
Right, and so that's the key point here, is that this you would then use, you would be taking a nitrogen-rich strip, then taking another part of the field, and it's the comparison between the two, not the number itself.
That's right. So in our example where we have a nitrogen ramp where it goes from 0, 20, 40, 60 all the way up to 200, you can quantify the point where it stops making a difference. And in that way you target your ideal nitrogen rate.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah.
Okay, so another indication that we could use in terms of how the crop is performing is to use relative plant height. And this has been used for a long time. This is kind of the older technology, or less technical technology, especially if you just start using a little duct tape and some rulers together. So John's going to demonstrate how you would normally do this. Typically what we've done in the past is in research we will go to the tallest point of the plant, but now they're looking at using possible technology where you would almost go through with sonar, in the way that you could have, say, sonar on the boom to be able to figure out where that plant canopy is. And obviously that's not going to be to the tallest point of the plant, but more to the general height of the plant canopy. So that's one way that we could be seeing in the future. It's old technology now, but could be turned into new technology in terms of crop performance.
And we should probably move to the nitrogen deficient here if we can. So here is nitrogen rich, and then as we move to the low nitrogen, quite obviously.
And then this is low nitrogen, so quite a difference in terms of the plant height here compared to the original strip that we were standing in.
And so that nitrogen-rich strip was what was applied there and what was applied here?
200 pounds of nitrogen, and this is 0 nitrogen.
Okay.
And so the ramp continues on in 20-pound increments. So now you're able to go through and use this plant height as we go down until the plant kind of hits that maximum height, and then you know that you're probably within the right realm of where you'd want to be for your total fertilization and optimum rates. But in terms of other technology, John will demonstrate here, we have the Greenseeker, and these have been used on booms in the past. This is a handheld unit. It actually emits a light source that you can kind of see flashing
there. See that red light?
Okay. And so that red light is actually emitting a source to be able to figure out biomass. And so in similar to plant height, this is looking at total biomass. If you're running this too close to the plant canopy, you'll actually get an error message, but what you want to do is run it right above the row, above the plant canopy, and you pull the trigger, and as you walk, it pulls numbers as it emits the light, and when you release the trigger, it gives you an average for the area that you ran it through. And so in this case, what we've been doing is using the same thing with the high nitrogen vamp versus the low nitrogen, or zero nitrogen application in this case. Did you get a different number at least, John?
Yep. Oh, I was too close.
Too close, now you're getting an error message.
It's quite the walk you have, John, when you have to do it.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
And so again, these are relative differences. In the same way that the SPAD meter, both the iPhone or iVersion as well as the handheld SPAD meter that John was just demonstrating, they're relative numbers. So the number itself doesn't really mean a lot until you have something to compare it to. So comparing the high nitrogen to the low nitrogen, or what your farmer rate is.
The one thing we should probably mention is this is the unit that probably has the best application to some Western Canadian calibration. And the work done by the late Guy Lafond at Indian Head, the sites at Brandon and other spots, have actually developed calibration. So these values taken at earlier stages of growth for wheat and canola can do yield estimates, and if they show big enough differences between the N-rich and the farmer practice, will trigger nitrogen applications. So it's close to being there as far as providing not just field scouting, but actually a possible recommendation. And some of these other devices don't have that part built in yet. So that's available on a website. Google N-use efficiency at Oklahoma State University, and then you can select those Western Canada charts for wheat and canola.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John.
Okay.